Hey guys, Nicole here with Obscure Reptiles and Caging, and today I'm going to be telling you about Dumerils Boas. So let's get started. Hey guys, so today I'm going to be telling you a little bit about Dumerils Boas. So right here I have my female Dumerils. I have two of them and I took them outside for some good close-ups for you guys so you could see them in a little bit better natural lighting. But right here, this is my 9-month-old Dumerils Boa. If you are looking for a large reptile or a large snake that has the personality of a ball python but in a much larger package, a Dumerils Boa is for you. So I have both regular boas, I have an eyeless boa, and I have some Dumerils boas. And the reason I like these guys the most is they're very laid back. They're pretty much they're like a ball python, but they won't roll up when they're nervous. They're very slow and deliberate movements compared to regular boas that are very jumpy, very head shy. As you can see, she just looks around, doesn't do very much. Very laid back personality. And with the benefit of will eat anything at any time. So it's really easy to feed her frozen thawed, her and the male. It's very easy to feed them frozen thawed. It's very easy to be able to handle them. And they're just a very enjoyable snake. So when it comes to Dumerils Boas, we'll get all into the care and stuff like that. But when it comes to these guys specifically, you're really only going to find them in standard colors. There's really not any morphs. A few people have said things about things like hypo, stuff like that. But when it comes to these guys, you're really just going to find a standard Dumerils Boa. These guys come from Madagascar, and the reason they have the color and the pattern that they have is because they were isolated, and this is the only color and pattern that really came out of that isolation. You can get them, you can see in the photos, I'll put some in here of when they're outside, that this girl has some nice blushing. It's a little bit more pink than the boy. And the colors can range from grays to browns to pinks, and I've even seen some that almost look like they're hypo, but they're not. They're just a lot different colors. So the colors can have a huge gradient from darks to lights, all different colors, but they're all really just Dumerils Boas. So when it comes to these guys, they're pretty tricky when it comes to breeding. That's why sometimes you can get them for $100, sometimes you get them for $1,000. It all depends on the market at that time. Now there seems to be a big flux of how expensive they are. It just fluctuates depending on the market. So breeding these guys, you could be getting a $100 baby, or you could be making a good amount. So these guys are more or less for the passion rather than just the money, because you can't really rely on these guys to have a solid price. Like I said before, these guys do get a lot larger than, for example, a ball python. They're a heavier bodied animal. For example, a ball python is very thick, but not that long. These guys can get 4, 6, or even I've heard of 8 feet long, but that's not very common. They will get very large, and they need a very large enclosure to make up for the fact that they do get so large. These guys are full grown. You're going to want something very big, something like a 6x2x2. And the reason that they need something so big is these are terrestrial animals. So that means that they live in the ground, they live under the substrate, and they will burrow, and they like to stay on the ground. They're not going to climb too much. It's not something like a corn snake where if you put a bunch of branches, you'll see them sitting on top and staying up there happily. They're more or less going to burrow under whatever substrate you have and sit under there. When you get these guys, because they get so large, you want a 6x2x2 because that gives them a little bit of an option of climbing and a lot of ground space. These guys can live 15 to 20 years, so you want to make sure that if you want one of these, this is a long commitment. This isn't just an animal that's only going to live for 4 or 5 years. This is something that's going to live for a very long time. So make sure you want this before you purchase it. So right now, because these guys are so young, I have them in a rack. Right now, these guys are in a 28-quart tub. They will be moved up to a 41-quart shortly, and I've actually got some 4x2x16s that they will go into until they're full grown, and then they'll both be in 6x2x2s. Same as my eyeless boa. So basically, whatever care that you're used to for a regular boa, something like a red-tail boa, something like that, that's basically the size and caging you're going to need for these guys. Reptiles that I keep are generally around the same temperature when it comes to their cool side, stuff like that, because I keep my reptile room heated, so that way I only keep animals that specifically work for my reptile room. So these guys need around an 80-degree cold, which is same with ball python, same with regular boas. These guys are going to need a hot spot around 90 degrees. They're not going to need such high humidity like a normal common boa. Somewhere right around 50% is perfect for these guys. Being this age, anything younger, and all the way up to around, let's say, 1.5 to 2 years old, you're going to feed these guys every 7 days. Like I mentioned before, they are very good at eating. So don't overfeed them. When you feed them, you're going to feed them the thickest part of their body. So right here is around the thickest part of her body. So if you go and you hold up a, let's say, small mouse to this, small mouse is going to be way smaller than what this is right here. Right around here, we can go with a weaned rat, which would kind of be a little bit large, or right now these guys are on medium to large mice. That's the size around her body is. That's what we feed her, because when they eat, you do not want to see a lump in their body. It's a lot easier to feed them, but you don't want to, quote, power feed them. When you power feed a boa, or when you power feed any reptile, meaning you feed them too much too quickly, it shortens their lifespan by a lot. And we want these animals to live the full 15 or 20 or even more years. So make sure you are feeding the animals properly. As they grow, the food size grows with it. And as I mentioned before, these guys are terrestrial. They stay on the ground. They love to dig. They love hides. They love things that are low to the ground. So what I personally use is Reptichip. In the Reptichip, I will put hides, I will put their water dish, and I will put some cork bark or other things like that, so they can get underneath it and they can feel like they are completely hidden. Because sometimes when you open these guys' cage, you won't see them at all. That's the scariest part. When these guys are huge and they're very hungry, that's why you want to get them on frozen thawed. Because if they're used to live coming in their cage and they're completely hidden and this thing's 6 foot long, this big around, you don't want to be reaching your hand in there. So when it comes to my animals, I always pick them up with a hook. That way they know it's not food, it's time to come out, and they're not aggressive. That's how I prevent myself from getting bit. One of the biggest killers for these guys is obesity. You do not want a fat Dumerils boa. When it comes to these guys, it's very easy to overfeed. If I wanted to, I could feed her every 3 or 4 days and she would eat. But you don't want to do that, because that's going to shorten her life. You want to have your animal live as long and healthy. Like, you take your dog for a walk because it's good for them. You feed them healthy treats because it's good for them. Very simple with these guys. Proper heat, proper humidity, and proper feeding. It's really all that they need, other than having a constant source of water. They're very simple animals, and that gets overlooked because so many people think they're even easier than they are. Oh, it doesn't matter the humidity. Oh, the temperature's off a few degrees. Very simple animals that you want to just make sure you're taking care of to the best of your ability. As you can see, I've been holding her this entire time. She hasn't done anything aggressive. She hasn't struck. She hasn't even jumped when I've touched her funny or poked her by accident. They're very laid back animals. All animals are completely different, so you may get one that's a little bit more snippy, but I have two and both of them are just as laid back as this female is right here. I'm going to do a breeding video when these guys get a little bit older, so it's going to take a couple of years, but we're going to do a breeding video, or if I can get any of my friends who have these guys, we'll do one sooner than that, but we're going to do a breeding video. When it comes to these guys, you want to wait till they're at least 3 to 5 years old. When it comes to boas, she's a Dumerils Boa. She will self-incubate the babies. There's no eggs involved. Everything happens inside her, and she has live births. So it's a lot harder on her body than just shooting out a couple of eggs and sitting on them. She actually has live babies. So it's a lot harder on their bodies, so you want to wait till they're older, and I won't breed her until she's in perfect body condition. The thing to mention is when it comes to sexing these guys, it's not 100% accurate. It's about 95-90% accurate, but when it comes to these guys and telling their gender, is they have spurs. Females do not, males do. So right here, you can see how she has no spurs. Males have tiny spurs. I'll try to get my male to hold still so you guys can see, but females have absolutely no spurs. Once in a while, you will get a female with very small spurs that may look like a male, but it's a pretty accurate way of breeding these guys. It's probably going to be hard to see on camera, but right there, he's got a that very dark spot right there is a very tiny little spur. Only males will have the spurs, and females won't. Again, that's not 100% accurate. Once in a while, you'll get a female with spurs or a male with such tiny ones you can't really see, but generally, that's how you check the gender on these guys. If you're looking for a larger bodied animal with a very nice personality, I would highly recommend Dumerils Boas. That's it for this video. If you guys have any questions, put them in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. It really helps out. And we're going to be doing videos every Wednesday. So we'll see you next Wednesday.